Everything that happens to Yoko in her private life, main film Double Bind, is, as it were, a mirrored copy done by a script writer from the sub-film, Perfect Blue. The 180-degree principle also explains the end of the film when Mima tells the viewer in her mirror image that she is real. In other words, through Yoko's possession of her character Mima, she has now completely become Mima Kirigo, the successful actress. Her mind has become perfect blue through a complete metamorphosis, and she totally exists as her character Mima with a clear, convinced mind. Yoko's real life has been swapped for a fictional character created by someone else, and that makes her a victim of MK Ultra programming, which is the second icing on the cake of Satoshi Kon. Also, does she have no memories of the metamorphosis or who she used to be? Her life is now in someone else's hands, and the original Yoko no longer exists. Yoko and Mima, who formed a twin unity throughout the film, have become a one unity due to the complete metamorphosis, namely the successful actress Mima Kirigo. In the final scene, we see Mima standing at a distance when visiting Rumi in the hospital, and Satoshi Kon has shown her face as a strange clown mask with a huge smile on her face, which looks quite demonic. And in the next shot, we see her face with big sunglasses on and with no shadow under the nose, which also looks like a mask. Then the doctor says to her, sometimes she falls back into her Rumi character. Mima replies, I know I will never see her again. Mima means here her own character Yoko, whom she will never see again. Then she continues, but thanks to her I am who I am today, namely the successful actress Mima Kirigo. Her soul, of Yoko, has been sold to the devil, or rather I prefer, her brain has been hacked. And this is what Satoshi Kon wants to tell the public under the surface about the existence of satanic occult brotherhoods operating within that industry. And that's why we also see the evil King Berg at the beginning of the film that is seemingly defeated by Powertron, but in reality has done its job. Now let Met take a statement on selling your soul. Personally, I don't believe there is such a thing as selling your soul to the devil. But I use the terminology because of this statement from certain Hollywood stars and artists today, including Aubrey Plaza. In my opinion, they themselves are convinced that they have done so. I do believe that there are people who can convince other persons that they have sold their souls or are able to deceive others into doing it. Satanic cults can indeed cause considerable damage, but are in essence worthless cults because it is separate from truth and is founded on illusion, disorientation, and manipulation. So to say, untruth.
I sold my soul to the devil. This is the first time I'm wearing a long dress, so soak it in, America. Get used to this.
In referring to the Mima's mask, the word clown comes from the word clone, or someone who imitates another. A clown makes everyone laugh with his craziness stupidity because the audience recognizes or sees itself mirrored in its behavior. This is all done in a subliminal way by Satoshi Kon, and also means that Mima is under mind control of something or someone in the final scene. Rumi in her past as an old pop idol has already undergone the complete metamorphosis and is already a unity with her old character. That's why she doesn't have a private character in Double Bind like Yoko plus Mima and Mr. Meme Mania do have. But Rumi's own MK Ultra programming, possession, has made her mad, regret longing for her past. Because she has never been able to find the original Rumi again. Her MK Ultra programming of multiple identities becomes apparent when we see her in the fight scene with Mima and being pierced by a piece of glass. She then sees herself reflected several times in the broken glass pieces meaning multiple personalities. Mima pushes Rumi away from the truck, after which the driver and his co-driver come running and see them all injured. One of them yells, "Call the police." "No, call an ambulance." Hereby call the police is meant the fact that MK Ultra programming is simply a criminal act. Mima overcomes Rumi as virtual Mima in the fight, and that means that Mima has overcome her conscientious objection, but in the negative sense of the word. She has completely sacrificed herself here. And then the rising sun appears in a clear blue sky. Perfect Blue. The metamorphosis is complete. The fact that Perfect Blue is the sub-film is apparent from the fact that the letter bomb explodes exactly to the second as the director counts down the scene of Mima. This is the beginning of a recording take of the Perfect Blue sub-movie. The blood seeps from the hands through the threatening letter that reads, "Next time it's real." However, the seepage of the blood from the teacup in a later scene with Mima leaves no trace. This means that the scene is an acted hallucination in the Perfect Blue sub-movie. After all, Mima says, "I don't know whether this blood is real or not." She also does not know whether she was killed by the truck and now living in a dream or whether the truck was a hallucination. Since the character Mima is a person who has hallucinations in her role in the sub-film Perfect Blue, makes it an acted hallucination. But as viewers, we think we are watching the main movie, and we don't understand exactly what is going on. In this way, some other small details also become clear. Some bystanders, when watching the filming of Mima Kirigo, do not recognize her because Yoko has only just started acting and is still unknown to the public. Dr. Tuko from Double Bind suspects that the perpetrator commits the murders to transform into a woman because the perpetrator peels off the skin of his victims. She says he is doing this to turn into a woman and then, cut, end of the scene. What comes after the or is not known but can now be entered as in an MK Ultra mind control slave. The transformation into a woman corresponds to the theme in the thriller horror film Silence of the Lambs from 1991 with Jodie Foster. In this story, serial killer Buffalo Bill kidnaps and kills women to turn their skin into a dress to become a woman. Here too we see a reference to the wound of Christ on the body of Buffalo Bill tattooed stigmata. Victims of MK Ultra satanic sexual abuse are convinced by a handler to sacrifice themselves to an evil entity, portraying it as something noble. As Aubrey Plaza says, she sold her soul to the devil and it doesn't seem to bother her. Why Satoshi Kon tells the story in such a bumbling way? Satoshi Kon wants to tell something about the industry with all its success, attractiveness and fame, and the darkness behind it. These are young, naive women who want to follow their dream as a singer or actress, but in the meantime run the risk of being prepared as MK Ultra beta sex kittens through Monarch programming. Why has Satoshi Kon not made this clearer? Such as Jodie Foster in The Accused, who tells part of the story through a lawsuit about what exactly happened, and where it is discussed who is at fault and who is not. Why does he want to keep it so mysterious and complex for the average viewer, without making a clear statement about the demonic aspect of MK Ultra? From an artistic point of view, the answer could be that he wants the viewer to experience the same anxiety and disorientation that Mima experiences. However, he does so without clearly wanting to make a statement in the film about what is latently going on in that industry, possibly for fear of rancor. Possibly he wants to keep young people away from the industry through a horror film, and the positive note of the final scene is part of the cover. Maybe Satoshi Kon hopes that alert writers of film analyses can still get his message out in this way. It is very admirable that he takes a risk to tell this second icing on the cake to the public. However, it seems that he himself is a member of a certain secret brotherhood, given some of the hand gestures he shows on some of his portrait photos. Is he aware of the MK Ultra programming because it takes place within his own ranks? By the way, being a member of a brotherhood does not mean that you by definition act criminally behind the scenes, just as not every Catholic priest is guilty of abuse, even if you sometimes have the idea that they do. But being part of a brotherhood might explain how Satoshi Kon came to that knowledge of the MK Ultra method. More likely, the knowledge comes from writer Yoshikazu Takeuchi of the book Perfect Blue, Complete Metamorphosis. To what extent is the film itself a formula in progress for bringing about MK Ultra programming in the viewer of the film? Pronouncing what will happen in advance is also called a magic spell within the practice of magic, as for example by the Othyo, Ordo Templi Orientis, is practiced. An animation film as an instrument for mind control programming is not new, and the Walt Disney film Fantasia is a good example of this. This is explained by Cisco Wheeler in the book The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave with co-writer Fritz Springmeier. In my opinion, with the film Eyes Wide Shut from 1999, Stanley Kubrick wanted to expose an influential satanic sex cult without directly saying that to the viewer. He has indirectly shown this to the public because the film refers to a dream, as the film is based on the 1926 book called Traumnovelle, Dream Novella, by Arthur Schnitzler. Nor does he make a clear statement in the film about this in order to plant a seed and allows the viewer's awareness to grow on its own. With the title Eyes Wide Shut, he indicates that the satanic sex cult exerts great influence in society in a latent way. You don't see them, but they are practically in front of us. Obviously, he chooses to hide this the open because it is simply too dangerous to reveal such a brotherhood. Kubrick had his own methods for indirectly conveying certain meanings in his films. In his war film Full Metal Jacket from 1987, we see a group of soldiers sitting on the ground between the destruction of the city. In the background, we see a burning tower. Building and the whole composition of the shot resembles the group of primitive monkeys around the monolith in his film 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. Is this shot in Full Metal Jacket a symbol of the decline of warlike humanity to the primitive mindset of the apes? Not true at all, said Kubrick, who had received a letter from a film enthusiast with this observation. It's possible that Kubrick made the letter up with the idea of planting this seed within the movie viewer. The book The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave by Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier, 1996, talks about Walt Disney's Fantasia, 1940, as a tool to enslave. I want to make it clear that watching the movie Fantasia in the cinema or at home will not enslave the viewer into a total mind control slave. Applying MK Ultra programming is a long process that involves drugs, trauma, and a handler. If the film is simply viewed by an average audience, this will not cause any damage. This reasoning also applies to the film Perfect Blue. Cisco Wheeler is a victim of a trauma-based mind control past who has been rescued from the Illuminati by convinced Christian and publicist Fritz Springmeier. Fantasia is not a traditional cinema film, but consists of 8 animated segments of classical music. We see the conductor as a shadow figure introduce the music pieces in between. In my opinion, this first full-length Disney cartoon flopped mercilessly at the box office because it simply didn't have the purpose of being a cinema film. This is a method in which the subjects, children, are repeatedly forced to look at Fantasia under the influence of certain drugs and thus descend into the darkness of their own psyche as a spiral, whereby at a given moment the mind is tortured and breaks down like a broken mirror. All these mirror pieces can be programmed into different alter egos, such as a sex slave or a spy. In Perfect Blue, we see a clear reference to this in the final scene, where Rumi is pierced with a piece of glass from a shop window and finds herself reflected in all the broken pieces of glass. According to an FBI document based on WikiLeaks, certain symbols are used by pedophiles to indicate their sexual orientation. For example, a triangle in a spiral shape folded inwards, a downward spiral, means little boy lovers. In other words, a child completely manipulated by MK Ultra as a sex slave like Cisco Wheeler and Kathy O'Brien were. Over the years, numerous victims of satanic ritual abuse have come forward with their experiences, including Kathy O'Brien. According to O'Brien, the knowledge surrounding the human brain has been known since the ancient Egyptians and has been passed down through secret societies through the ages. She is an MK Ultra survivor and has been subjected to a trauma-based mind control existence. That age-old knowledge has in any case fallen into the hands of the Michigan Mafia, who abused her. In 1988, she was freed by CIA agent Mark Phillips along with her daughter and was stripped of her programming, as a cure over a period of about 2 years. So he states at the Granada Forum somewhere in the early 90s. Since that time, Phillips has come out with his publications on this subject of occult brotherhoods as the elite in society. On the same forum, O'Brien talks about her background, how she ended up in the pedophile network through her incestuous father, and about her MK Ultra mind control programming. She has been used as a mind control slave and as a spy, but above all as a sex slave through the so-called Monarch Beta Sex Kitten programming. Project Monarch is part of the MK Ultra program. MK stands for the German words, Mind Control or Mind Control. Monarch, symbolized by a butterfly, can be divided into alpha, beta, to theta programming. Beta in this case means a combination of alpha logic programming and the beta primitive consciousness of the sex programming. This programming removes all learned moral beliefs and stimulates the primitive sexual instincts without inhibitions. This program, mostly for women, is to develop the ultimate prostitute, a sex machine. This is the most used programming by the abusive figures with the knowledge of Project Monarch. Children of those who know this are sold, after an incest trajectory, to the network for additional beta programming to ultimately satisfy the bizarre perversions of politicians, bankers, drug lords, or anyone else of any value to the network. Kathy O'Brien cites high-ranking figures as her abusers in politics, such as former President Ford, the Clintons, and the Bush family. She also says that the elite is aware of this ancient knowledge of the human brain and has fully mapped it in terms of the specific functions of the brain parts and how to program them. A so-called mind map. As an example of Monarch Beta Sex Kittens, I will show a number of short excerpts by Hollywood actress Aubrey Plaza, born in Delaware in 1984. She met alleged pedophile Joe Biden when she was 16. At the age of 20, she ended up in the hospital with a TIA, which is temporary closure of a blood vessel in the brain, where she told the hospital staff that she was 16 years old. She doesn't know why she lied about her age, but according to her, that was the only number she could give. Unabashedly and without a filter, she appears in various talk shows, programs, and interviews, among other things, to promote her films, and seems to have absolutely no inhibitions. She's quite a slutty girl who openly French kisses a much older fellow candidate on a TV talk show. Exactly the dirty girl she plays as an actress in the film with Robert De Niro, Dirty Grandpa, from 2016. Here, she mixes her slouchy character Lenore with her own personality and says when she read the script during the auditions, she only wanted to take on the role of the character having sex with De Niro, which she got eventually. Before the shoot of Dirty Grandpa, Plaza sent a slutty photo of herself and her character as Lenore with the message, "Happy shooting." For Aubrey Plaza, Dirty Grandpa is a love story. There is virtually no distinction to be found in her acting and her private behavior. Aubrey Plaza also plays in the horror TV series Chucky from 2021, which is based on the horror film Child's Play from 1988. This is a film about a doll named Chucky who is possessed by a demon. What she says about her uncle is remarkable. How in the time when the movie Child's Play came out and Chucky dolls were sold as marketing items, and he showed them to his 3-year-old children, Plaza's cousins. This has always remained a thing of fear in the family. I wonder to what extent the uncle and Plaza's family have to do with her dubious Catholic childhood. I call the uncle specifically because Mima in Perfect Blue has a telephone conversation with her mother where she tells that she has stopped her singing career as a pop idol. Her mother regrets that and says, "Your uncle from Yamaguchi always buys 20 singles of your new songs." A strange sentence that I have never been able to place in the whole story of Perfect Blue, but it may indicate involvement of Mima's uncle in incest and in the start of her singing career. The big question is to what extent Aubrey Plaza is aware of her strange, but sometimes natural comic behavior which is sexy, curious, and quick on reply. She is not always aware of her own words and does not know why she is present in a certain place. Literally on the talk show, she says to David Letterman, "I don't know why I'm here," something she tries to hide from the public. She grew up in a Catholic nun school and openly says that it is the main cause of her weirdness. She also openly tells in a strange way that she was born as an accident when her parents were both 20 years old. We also see how Plaza is asked during an interview what her last Google search was. She comes up with, "Do I have stigmata?" something I only noticed after writing the analysis about stigmata in this video. The line between truth and falsehood disappears completely with her, and she misleads you as a viewer, just like the film Perfect Blue. She herself says during her presentation of the Independent Film Awards that she is here to make everyone feel uncomfortable. It is certainly remarkable how she generally presents herself to the outside world and says that she is a witch or a practitioner of Wicca. She really doesn't seem ashamed of anything, and you get the idea that her psyche has been messed with from an early age. Probably through satanic ritual abuse that she openly suggests by saying, "I sold my soul to the devil," which I translate as, "My brain has been hacked." But somehow she or someone else in her mind makes her behavior her strong point by just being who she is and having success with it, and taking her weirdness into the bargain. She has no frame of reference that many talk show hosts are able to use a lot. All in all, Plaza doesn't seem to me to be the person she once was or should be. The evil Kingbird at the beginning of Perfect Blue has struck again in the network.
次は必ず倒してやるからな。